Yavatuhu pani Enchamukin ilakayo Kashtu.
Hello and welcome to the Maya cosmology course. We don't have a lot of live participants in this session, but this is a very exciting session because we're going to talk about the Mayan pantheon, the gods of the Mayan world. And well, I want to share with you that I just came back from Teotihuacan. I had the opportunity to go there right after I assisted a velación de ánimas. I'm translating it now to Wake of the Souls. It's a ritual where we stay up all night, we sing, and we lay flowers, and we do all kinds of nice things. We remember every single person that wants to be remembered. We call their names that have passed away, obviously. Then, of course, we honor the souls of those that have danced in the dance group, and we call them generales, the generals, and the captains of the groups, the chiefs of the groups. So we do all that, and it's an amazing connection with our ancestors and with death and with the ancient world. And coming out of that, I went into the pyramids. And it really was a good thing for this class because it's allowed me to review everything I knew, everything I know. It allowed me to make connection again with the essences of what the Toltecs and the Mayas knew, and that can be called gods, okay? So we're going to talk about gods on this session, the gods of the Maya world, the gods of the Toltec world. Are they the same, you might ask? Yes. The Mayas were Toltecs, and we've talked about this before. Toltec is a person that has a constructive mindset, that has a constructive way of approaching life, and so then they construct large pyramids, large temples. They like to develop the arts, the writing, the knowledge, the wisdom, astronomy, cosmology. So that's kind of the translation of Toltec. And as we saw in earlier modules, the Toltecs, the Teotihuacans were the ancient Toltecs, was this city in the center of Mesoamerica that influenced the rest of the cities in Mesoamerica. And if we look at the art style of Teotihuacan, and if we compare it to the Maya world, I'd like to think that the Mayas maybe were a little more, they developed the art style a little bit more. They developed, of course, the writing. They are the ones that developed the phonetic writing and a more elaborate type of writing. The stelae and the sculptures in the Maya world, they seem more elaborate. And I ask myself, why is that? Is it because they are from an after period? Because we've covered the eras and the ages of the Mayan people. Is it because of that? Or why is it? The creation of the world, every single culture has that. Every single culture has a myth, has a story. Gordon is very good at explaining how he raises the line between our logical thinking and the mystical thinking. He proves that there is no separation, that there is no absolute truth in the logical, mechanical mindset, and that the world itself, and this is supported by real science, it supports the fact that we are constantly creating the universe with our thoughts, with our minds, with our perceptions, that we don't live in a fixed, mechanical, pre-created world, that we are constantly creating it. And so to cover this part of the creation of the world according to the Toltecs and to the Mayas, I am going to extend this part into, from here to the end of the course, we're going to be creating the Maya world. And this chart, which we're going to be focusing on, the Cholquij or the Tzolkin, I'm going to reveal to you now that this is an actual code that also defines, it narrates, it tells about the creation of the world, the creation of our psyches, the creation of our minds. Everything we know of can be explained through this chart, through this code. That's why I call this Maya cosmology, because it does, in a way, this code try to explain within a closed code, within a closed mathematical system, the creation and the workings, the inner workings. It's kind of like the code of creation. But then there's, of course, many different codes of creation. We have our planets, and they create different codes. We have the I Ching and the 64 hexagrams. That's another code that maybe explains something that is even closer to genetics and to the 8 forces that shape cell structures. So there's a lot of codes. Some people have talked about this being a code of light, the frequency of light, the frequency of the sun, the frequency of the center of the galaxy. So then everything, as we've talked about before, everything is fed from the sun, everything's made by the energy of the sun, everything's tonal. And being that, then everything has that frequency. Everything's built on this code, on this frequency. Everything that is alive, everything that is organic, everything that is even not organic, but in this world that has been lit by the light of the sun, then it contains this energy and this code and it's this structure. So we're going to be covering this creation all along from here till the end of the course. And I'm going to give you clues so that you can study and study this creation, right? So the first clue, the first assignment is to, which I've given you before, is reading the Popol Vuh, getting the Popol Vuh and reading it, because there you will get a creation story from the Quiché Maya. Now, if you want another version of that, similar one but different, you can have the Anales of the Cachiquel. Cachiquel, remember the indigenous group, people, nation, neighbors of the Quiché, neighbors of the Tzutujil, the Cachiquel. They have another book, Anales, year records of the Cachiqueles, Cachiquel. So you can get that and you'll find another creation story there. And I recommend you read that. But then the understanding of the elements and the understanding of the process of the elements, and then those elements are the basis of this chart, then that describes the creation of the world as well. So we're going to be, like I said, covering that throughout the rest of the course. So in this session, we're going to be going a little bit more really into the gods of the Maya specifically, but then, of course, they all have equivalents. We're going to be like studying on the Maya names, the Maya versions of the same entities, the same gods, the same energies. But we're going to be like focusing on Maya language here. And we would start then with Hun Ab Ku. This would be one of the translations. Hun is number one. Ab is a particle that can be added to anything, and it just diversifies and amplifies whatever word it's being put to. Ab. Okay? So by itself, it can be translated as diversity. And Ku, sacred or God. Ku, sacred and God. Or, yeah, divinity. Now, there's a lot of this word God. I have to start with that because in the decolonization groups, workshops, books, people, communities, there's they talk a lot about the word God and how the understanding of it is very different from what we get from a Christian world. A lot of practitioners, native spirituality practitioners, ancestral spirituality practitioners, dancers, people that go to ceremonies, people that actually call on these gods, they are very keen on saying they're not gods. They always say it's an energy, it's a divine energy, because they want to get away from that concept that we have received from Christianity, but the meaning, the definition of God. But for practical reasons, I'm not going to fall into the tendency of trying to avoid the word God, and I'm going to use the word God just because I find it very practical. It's obviously understood that if we're talking about gods, then it's not a one God. So with that, we're good. I mean, we can talk about the Viking gods. We can talk about the Egyptian gods, and everybody just understands that, yeah, there's different entities, energies, consciousness, parts of the consciousness that have been kind of shaped by mankind into some type of entity with some type of shape, with some type of image, with certain attributes, with a personality, even with a certain powers, or that they represent certain things that are in our visible universe. And that's what mostly happens here, where we just, we're calling the God of the sun, but what's the difference between the God of the sun and the sun itself? There's not a lot of difference. It's pretty much the same thing. But then, yes, I do have to say that there would be a distinction. I mean, we must not oversimplify this and think that if we see the God of the sun, Kinich Ahau, it's not the sun. It is a divinity, it is a deity, it is a personification of the sun that is helpful to have. It's kind of an entity that becomes a mediator between the sun and us. It's kind of like a guardian. It's kind of like a spirit or a priest or an entity. So we do actually, as humans, create that. We do actually create the gods. And as we'll see later on in the Círculo de Medicina, even the earth is the greatest creator of the gods, because the earth allows us to be here, and then we create the gods. So Mother Earth, Mother Time is the greatest creator of gods, is the mother of gods. And there's a river in the Amazon called Madre de Dios, Mother of God. So let's begin with this, which Hunapku, which there's a lot of discussion about Hunapku. And because some people say that this God didn't really exist in the Maya classical period, and that it was a concept that was introduced with the Spanish of a single God or the one God, because that's what it kind of means, like the one God, the only God, the great one God. So, where do I stand in this discussion? Well, I like to think that it is not the case, that it did exist before. I've been taught by elders that the Hunapku was not really worshipped. It didn't have any temples dedicated to him. It didn't. There wasn't any worship to this specific entity, because the Hunapku is basically a frequency, a code, kind of like the code of creation. So the code of creation creates, like, the code in which creation can be written, but is not creation itself. So there's no point in having a dialogue and having a worship and having a relationship with the code itself, right? It does make sense to have a relationship, for example, with Hunapku's son, Itzamna, which represents the intention of the world, the intention of the universe, this energy of willpower, which is the essence and the creator energy of the world and everything that exists. So that is like a real thing that we can interact with, and that's why it makes sense to actually worship or pray or do things with that energy, and even make sculptures and gods and temples to it. But it's not the case with Hunapku, as I've been taught. Hunapku is just the code, the underlying code of the world. It's not an entity. So there's no point in kind of praying to him, because it's not there. It's not a personification, as it happens with the rest of the gods. They are personifications. They are entities that you can talk to, you can pray to, you can dialogue with. So that's one of the situations with Hunapku. So that's what then makes sense in thinking that it did exist before. And then the Lacandon, where I lived, they have a very similar entity or god, which they call the Hachakyum, which translates into the true creator. Hach is true, Akyum, that creates it, the true creator, which I would guess then it's equivalent of Hunapku. So why do they say that this might have been brought by the Spanish? Because when the Spanish came, then of course everybody in the Mayan Peninsula was focused on praying and having interaction with very specific entities and gods, not so much with Hunapku. And of course then the colonization and the evangelization of the Mayas made it practical to, it made sense to them when they heard the Spanish, hey, why are you guys praying to different gods? You should be praying to the one God. And I guess the Mayas went like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, you're right. Why have we forgotten about Hunapku? He's we understand that there's no that much of a point of praying to him, but yeah, let's not forget him. Let's bring him back. Let's remember that this entity, this God. So it became like the way to call God in those times. It was kind of brought back because of that, because it made sense for the Mayas that's what they understood as that the Spanish were trying to predicate. The real God, the one creation, the one the one, well, here you see it, the one diversity in Q. Another translation of Q is in divine frequency, in divine frequency. So the one diversity in divine frequency. That would be another way to understand it, the Hunapku. But then there is some people that believe that there is a representation of Hunapku in some places, and most of the time it's represented as just as a human being, just like a god person. And it looks like, man, how else can you can you think of a god that is not man? Are we the gods? Are we the creators of the gods? We are the creators of the gods, maybe. And the women, yeah. So Hunapku is the father of Hunitsamna, which is also known as Itsamna or just Samna. Itsam, it's the word for lizard, for what's it called? These lizards that are on the beach all the time, the iguanas. The iguanas. That's Itsam. It's just like a word for lizard that is not specific on a species of a lizard. So Itsam. And Na is a word for home or construction or house or something where a nest. Okay, Itsamna, the nest of the lizard, the nest of the Itsam. So what does it represent? Well, this is really fascinating because anywhere you go in Mesoamerica, you'll come to, in any image you look at, you'll find the lizard, you'll find the snake, you'll find some type of reptile. So the reptile is crucial and important. And we're going to see that it's also Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan. But before it's a snake, let's think of it as a crocodile. As a very large crocodile. You know how lagoons have like an Amazon worldview too. The lagoons have a hichi. Hichi is like the spirit of the lagoon, but that spirit of the lagoon is an animal in the lagoon. It's either a snake, an anaconda snake, and of course the largest one in the lagoon, or it's a caiman, the largest of all the caimans. That's the hichi. So the spirit of the lagoon is, and that spirit takes care of the lagoon. That spirit. So if you kill that caiman or that snake, you killed the spirit of the lagoon, and then the lagoon actually dies. The lagoon actually changes. The great snake or the great caiman does actually somehow preserve the integrity of the lagoon. In a real sense, it balances the species in the lagoon and allows the lagoon to stay as it is. As soon as this spirit is gone, the lagoons proceed into what is a very common thing in the Amazon oxbow lakes, where the lagoon will eventually become the rainforest again, will dry out. But this depends on certain factors. And some lagoons don't dry out. Some lagoons just stay. And according to the Amazon people, and I guess the Mayas would agree, it's because of this spirit that lies in the lagoon. Now, we're going to learn a lot more about the great snake, the great crocodile, the great caiman, and we're gonna have a lot of time to talk about it, because one of the 20 signs is it. So we are already touching on one of the 20 signs here. like they're the same thing. The first sign, the sign of the Imosh, the sign of the crocodile, it's kind of the same energy, the same principle, the same god as Hunitsamna. Okay, we have a question. Is Mayan quite patriarchal historically? Or is that an introduced overlay? Many thanks. I mean, like the snake. Is it always male? There's no information. I mean, I guess that I would say that is the patriarchal thing, where you're looking at giving genres to, you know, looking to see it, to divide or to think this is male or female. I mean, you look at a snake, it's really difficult to tell which sex it is. So it's not. I mean, at least here, maybe yes, in the post-classic, maybe you could find maybe things that you can call patriarchal. I don't know. But as far as the cosmology goes, there's no, there isn't that. It's just our current situation that is projecting that into this. It's not from here that this is coming. There's no separation, right? And we're going to see actually that that there is a creator couple, so everything's in couples. So here it's let's think of it where there is a part of the energy, a part of the creation, where the sexes are together and they're not separated, and the energy is and this kind of describing a more essential concept, right? So the Itzamna describes the willpower, the intent of the universe. So the whole universe is seen by the Toltecs, by the Mayas, as one great dragon, one great crocodile. And you see it here. This is the image of it right here being depicted. It has a human inside of it. And in fact, here it has two heads, one to the right and one to the left. So it has this two-faced, two-headed crocodile. And the man and the woman inside of the head is very old. That's what you would identify with this. These things are always depicting age, right? They're the ojeras, the lines below the eyes. They mean age. They mean somebody that has been. It's old and has also stayed up all night a lot. So it represents anybody that has this little symbol underneath the eye. It's kind of like a god. And then of the snake eye in the eye. So the eye is not a little dot. It's a line that's making a spiral. So that represents also like a person, or that is in God's state. So this is so Itzamna represents the whole universe. We're going to be studying the elements, and we're going to see that the first element is the fire, and it represents the intention of the universe. Everything exists because it wants to exist. That's the first energy that appears, that exists. After that energy, so these four elements, these four energies, they kind of describe a process of, if you want to think of it, it's not really the time we experience as we experience it, but it does have a sequential order to it. So like there's one that comes first, then there's the second, there's the third and the fourth, and then it it returns into the first again. As we experience the days in the calendar, we go through the 4 elements every 4 days. One day is a different element. We start with the fire. We go north into the air. We come west into the water, and then we come south into earth, then back into fire. We're going to see later on when we talk about the elements that they get different orders and different placements according to different layers, and it gets all more and more complex and complicated. But here we want to start from the ground zero, from the most essential sense. So in the most essential sense, there is an entity, there is a God, a very, very worshipped God in the Maya world. It is said that there's a place called Izamal in Yucatan that is dedicated to this God. It's a very beautiful place, very, very beautiful. I invite you to come and visit it because there's a very large pyramids in there. Not everybody really goes there because everybody goes to Chichen Itza, everybody goes to Uxmal. Few people really go to Izamal, and Izamal is a place that was dedicated to Itzamna, or Hun Itzamna. Hun, again, is number 1. So everything can be distilled. Everything we see in this cosmos, everything we've experienced, it can be distilled, it can be separated into 4 energies. 4 colors. One energy is on top of the other. They're layers of a process. So the innermost layer is the red energy, and it's the energy of intent. So everything has intent. We have intent. The universe has intent. The earth is a great, great monster of intent. It's the like the Mexica depicted, it's the skirt of snakes. And like the Maya depicted it, is an earth monster that eats everything, and then from it comes everything as well. But it has many, many snakes. It has many, many different beings, beings that have their own willpower. Each one of us have our own willpower, our own intent. We have our own free will as well. And all of this is described within the Maya Toltec cosmological system. Willpower and free will, willpower, and I guess in English you call it free will. What do you call it? Libre albedrío is like the freedom to choose what you want to do. Libre albedrío. I would need to look at that translation. I don't have a word in English. That's amazing for albedrío. And I guess in English it just translates into free will. Okay. Libre albedrío. It means that in this world, you have the option to actually screw up. The divine order exists, but you can actually go against it. You have the freedom to go against, to be bad, to do a bad thing. You have the total freedom to really mess up something and to really go against what is just naturally the best thing to do. And that is described by one of the signs as well. And we're going to be seeing that. But first, the Hunitsamna, the energy of just the intent by itself. The intent here hasn't gone through the process of maturing, of developing the mind, the reflection. It hasn't gone through the process of developing the action. So it's just an intent. And it hasn't gone through the process of creating memory and reflecting after the action. So it's just intent. Sometimes it's described as a great sea, the great sea. And in the Maya worldview, there is three hearts, three main hearts in the world. The first is let me change here so we, three hearts. You have the three hearts, the heart of the sea, the heart of the earth, and the heart of the sky. Those are the three. But then Hunitsabna and the Imosh and the reptile energy describes it talks about the sea more, and it kind of then describes how everything, all of life came from the sea. It's almost as if they knew that, like the mother of everything somehow is the sea. So Hunitsamna, the crocodile, and this is seen as the sea too, like the sea, the great sea of life, the great sea from where all of life came out of. And it's like a crocodile that also kind of just comes out of the water and bites. You don't see it. You know how crocodiles have that, and caimans have that nature of being able to camouflage with the water. It's almost like as if the water, like all of a sudden, had jaws and just snapped you. So that's kind of the vision of this great sea, and how this great sea gives life, but it can also take it. It can also eat you. And it talks about this thing that we humans are wanting to build a way to balance, because the actual nature of the universe, as it was taught by the Toltecs, is predatorial. That means that there's no law, there's no governor, there's just principles, right? That kind of give a structure to the universe, but there's no actual judge or God or somebody that is going to avoid you doing something or force you to do something. That is not, and that's a very Christian, and not even Christian in the sense of the teachings of Jesus, right? No, this is of the liturgy of the institutional religions that then hijacked the teachings of Jesus, which are pretty much all religions, or all monotheistic religions, which then there are a lot of groups and people and books and etc. that describe how, in fact, those institutions, they are the work of another entity that is not the true creator, right? But that's another conversation, a very long one. So there is no judge, there is no entity that controls what you do. You have total freedom to do what you want to do. And so God is not that. Itzamna is not that. Itzamna is just the fact that the universe itself has a greater willpower, okay? And that willpower is predatorial. At the end of the day, at the end of times, this earth will be eaten up by the sun. Everything will be swallowed by something at some point. Everything is food for something. We're all food for something else. We will be swallowed by the earth at some point, right? So everything is predatorial. We eat ourselves. We need to kill other living beings to eat. That's the nature of the universe. If we allow ourselves to be preyed on by transdimensional entities, we're gonna be predated on. It depends on us if we allow that to happen, if we learn how to avoid it or not. And of course, I told you the story of how those entities were brought into this world and how we have allowed them to take over our lives and the whole world. But then there's, oh, I wish God would do something. Is God gonna do something about it? No. God is just Hunapku is just the principles, the codes of the creation. And then Itzamna, it's a great willpower. And yes, maybe there is a great willpower that is thinking or that is willing, that everything grows and everything expands and everything diversifies and everything gets richer, because that's what has happened in the world. The world, life, the planet looks to create diversity, looks to create an environment, a community of beings that, yes, they eat each other. We eat each other. That's how we're here in the world, to eat each other, to predate on each other. But I guess one thing is that one living being eats another living being, and another thing is that an inorganic being from another dimension eats energy from a human from this dimension. I guess that's that would be the difference. That would be the undesired predation from the desired predation. We want to feed other beings. We want to be food for somebody else. And that's why in this worldview, that's why the Mayas and the Toltecs, they had no trouble in offering themselves to a god or to an entity, because they understood that we're all part of each other, and the best thing you can do is be good food for something greater than yourself. So that's something to keep in mind. So this is Itzamna. Somebody have questions? Otherwise, this is one of the greatest, the most revered God, and we're gonna see Itzamna everywhere. In my sculptures, in my writing, anywhere you see this kind of reptile-looking thing, it's because everything comes out of Itzamna. Everything is part of Itzamna. That's another thing to keep in the concept. So we're all pieces of the greater willpower. So there's a great willpower. And we're all part of that willpower. We have our own independent willpower, intent, but it's not really our own. It comes from we are pieces of the Itzamna. We are head snakes, snake heads that come out of a greater entity or corpse of a snake. So we have like our own kind of independent, thinking and ways. We can move it any way we want, but we're not completely detached from the snake, from the greater body. Our desires, our intent is the intent of the universe. That's something that we need to know, that we need to reconnect to, because modern culture has cut the snakes and put them into flasks. Another question. Yes, were the sacrifices all willing, or did something twist that aspect also? Well, first thing to keep in mind, to remember, and I think I mentioned it, is that the sacrifices were the greatest justification for the colonization of the Americas. If we actually looked at the numbers, if we try to find some like real data, we would probably think that it was there was more sacrifices done by the Spanish, and more sacrifices done in medieval Europe than here. And of course, different concepts of it. So what we do see a lot of in the classical period and in the sculptures is self-sacrifice, but not like giving your life, not dying, but just offering your blood, offering your, and we describe the purpose of that too, which is not just giving and offering your energy, is also allowing yourself to enter a different state of consciousness. And then I did talk about how towards the post-classic, the Toltec cultures in Mesoamerica, they gradually were driven away from the Quetzalcoatl energy and were taken into the dark side of the Venus star. Venus is also represents, as a morning star, represents the light of the world, the shine, the art, the beauty, the love, and then as a evening star, it represents the everything that is dark and monstrous and ugly, and then Tezcatlipoca, the god, it would be the reflection of the light, so it's a shadow, and so there is an entity, an energy always in the universe that is part of the universe, and I guess it would be part of Itzamna, the part of Itzamna that is always has to somehow destroy, has to kill, has to renew, has to, and the earth does it all the time. It goes into great cycles of extinction events and glacial ages and meteorites hitting the earth, and it kills massively and creates great suffering, I guess. So that entity, that power, that energy has always been understood and known by all American cultures, even South American, and revered and honored and respected. And I would say that compared to what was brought from Europe, it was a lot more balanced, where in Europe was really where this entity of darkness took over with greater strength. But then I did tell that in Mesoamerica there was this process of the darker energies kind of, and the priests that worked for Tezcatlipoca and kind of gradually gained grounds. Not so much as what came from Europe, but more than what it was in the classical period. Another question, cannibalism was used by the colonists in New Zealand to wipe out groups that were not in accordance with them. Great propagandists, those Europeans. Yeah, so that's what we always have to keep in mind, that who's telling the story? And what are the intentions by telling the story? So another name that Itzamna might go by, Itzam Kab Ain. Ain is crocodile too. Itzam Kab Ain. And don't worry, you will be seeing Itzamna a lot more. So this is described in the Popol Vuh and in some books, and it's also described in codex, different codices or codex. I don't know how you say that in plural. And it's kind of confusing because it's kind of like the same thing but just called different ways. But then it describes the same process of the 4 elements that we'll be learning through this session and through the next sessions. Bitol, Tzakol, Alom, and Kajolom. The form giver, the maker, the conceiver, and the birth giver. The form giver kind of, I mean, if I think about it, what's the difference between the form giver and the maker? I'm like, isn't that the same thing? So these are translations that are formally given to these words that exist in Maya language and the Popol Vuh, Vitol, Tzakol, Alom, Ikacholom. And these are translations given. And to fully understand them, all we need to really understand is the process of the four elements, which is going to be just repeated everywhere. In the teaching of the 20 signs, we're going to see like 5 cycles that you can go around in this 4 element process. So each cycle you do, each sign that we learn about, is going to give you a clearer and clearer understanding of how this process works. And this is the core thing, the core knowledge, wisdom, science of Mesoamerica. It's so simple yet so profound and so complex at the same time, right? 4 elements, 4 directions that shape everything. And of course it goes through the 4 elements different times, so it gets more complex and there are different phases of each one of the elements. And then the elements switch around as well at some point, and then we can get 2 charts and it all gets even more and more complex, but that's why we're taking it step by step. And we're going to try to learn everything so that you're not confused by anything. So here we are setting already kind of the what I call the essential form. The essential form is like the first arrangement of the elements, the first arrangement of these entities or these forces, the forces of willpower, the force of mind, the force of action, and the force of memory. And, or that here are described as the form giver, the maker, the conceiver, and the birth giver. And you can see that each one of them has a color. So we're setting the basis of how do we arrange the colors, because we're going to see that the colors change when this 4 element cross gets another arrangement. But let's begin learning the first arrangement. So this is the first arrangement. This is the first way that it has been arranged. And to me, it's the most crucial one to really learn and to really stick to. Okay, so you have red as on the east as the fire, white as, or black as wind, as spirit in the north or death, blue or black again as in the west, and then here the east would be masculine and the west would be feminine. Okay, so blue and yellow to the south. Okay, fire, air in the north, water in the west, and earth at the south.
Kayo,